What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so very much for being here, for listening, for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. That helps the whole process keep going. Thank you so much for sending support that way. You can always go to zambonifunk.com where you can get a reading for yourself. We can do something simple and easy, like a 10-minute reading, very much like this weekly forecast is going to be. We can do a reading like via Zoom where we'll talk back and forth and get kind of down into the weeds and see what's really going on with your chart. If you are tired of letting other people do readings for you and you want to take the power into your own hands, I have a course coming up where we are going to learn how to use astrology from the very foundation. So it's very good for beginners. It's very good for intermediate level students. You never get done with the foundations, and this is going to be a really good course for working with the foundations and knowing why things are the way that they are in astrology. I'm very excited about it. There's way more going on at zambonifunk.com, but it's time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, this week is primarily Mars getting grumpier and grinding harder, and it's kind of rough. All right, so early in the week, we do have Mercury in Libra making a nice trine to Jupiter in Gemini with reception. Mercury rules that Jupiter in Gemini. A trine is going to be a helpful and supportive aspect. It's the kind of thing that, friendships are made of. And, between these two, in air signs, this looks like it's very diplomatic, very good for working out strategies or like listening to other people and sort of generating connections, that kind of way, especially if we're thinking about the sort of like listening techniques of like really listening to hear what the other person is saying, repeating back to them what they said and being like, is that what you meant? And then that person can be like, oh, that's not what I meant, and deepen what they said or like correct you and then run that pattern again. Or if they say yes, then you can be like, oh yes, that is what I meant, and here's an addendum to that, right? That sort of thing generates good connections, and those connections can be strong and fortified, and you can sort of build relationships on that kind of thing. Mercury in Libra trine to Jupiter in Gemini is very good for that kind of thing, especially earlier in the week. So I do like to see that in areas where diplomacy is a legitimate possibility, which is going to be most areas of real life. We're not talking about like whatever type of bullshit you see on the news with like wars and politicians who hate each other and all the rest of that. Like, I'm not talking about all that sort of shit. Like actually in your lived experience where you're like at the bakery or you're hanging out with your coworkers and shit like that. Like, that is going to be a really good way to sort of get in there and build some good relationships, because as things move through the week, then stuff gets a little more underhanded and weird. By the end of the week, Mercury has moved to the end of Libra, where we're going to see a square to Pluto in Capricorn. Anytime we see a square or a hard aspect to Pluto, then we're going to be thinking about power dynamics. Things are going to get sort of like, how can I pull strings and what can we do about that sort of situation. Mars in Cancer is also getting closer and closer to an opposition to that Pluto in Capricorn. We're not there yet. It's just, like I said, it's grind time for that Saturn, or for that Mars. Mars is getting close to a retrograde at this point. So we're going to see a slower and slower progression through Cancer for the next couple of weeks here. One thing about that Mars in Cancer is like out of place in general, right? So Mars in Cancer is said to be in fall. So one of the reasons for that is going to be like, all right, so Mars is our aggression planet. That's the one that wants to get up and do stuff. We can be associated with rage or inflammation or sharp things or separation, severing, heat, fires, all that sort of stuff. Like Mars on a good day is the motivation to get your ass up and handle some fucking business, right? Mars really likes to have a job to do and accomplish an aim. So Mars in Cancer. So Cancer is gonna be like home space, you know what I mean? The kitchen, or like the greenhouse. It's where we like love up the babies, the nursery, this kind of thing, right? So Mars in that sort of environment is apt to act out in some rough ways, right? One of the reasons why Mars has a tough time in Cancer is because Cancer is ruled by the moon. So the moon is the one that moves through the zodiac super quickly. We're going to see a lot of like, in the space of a week, the moon will be in like 3 different signs. It's going to change aspect relationships to planets all of the time, like we're going to see different relationships going on and the moon feels different ways all the time. One of my favorite ways to talk about the moon is vicissitudes, right? Just like all of the daily things that happen, or hourly even, like I ate 4 hours ago, but that was 4 hours ago, and that doesn't stop me from being hungry and mad about that shit now, right? Like that's sort of like always going through the stuff. That is who the moon is. And so when the moon, so Mars, if we're thinking about action orientation and that kind of thing, then it's good to have structure and boundaries and like rules for it. So we can think about Mars as being an athlete, right? So if you are in an athletic competition, then you have to play by the rules in order to win the game. And in fact, you can use the rules to win the game. And so that is something that Mars really likes. And so for that reason, Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which is a Saturn sign. Saturn is the planet of rules and boundaries and this kind of thing, right? So opposite to Capricorn is Cancer, where we're less good about boundaries. If we think about Cancer as being like the mothering sign, we can think about how a pregnant woman is literally 2 people. There's a person inside of her body. There's like no boundary between those 2 people, right? And then after birth, and we're still looking at breastfeeding and all, like there's a lot of like the boundary is thin between those 2 people, right? And so in that sort of place where there are not the boundaries are not as strict, where there's a lot of changing feelings and changing influences and this sort of stuff, then Mars doesn't really have those rules to hang on to and doesn't know how to win the game. And this can be a little bit disconcerting for Mars, and then can turn into something kind of ragey or, whiny. You see a lot of whininess with Mars in Cancer, or, upset is a thing that shows up. And so then Mars can then act out on stuff. And so we're going to see a lot of that sort of stuff. We've got the sun in Libra making a square to Mars in Cancer basically all week. That doesn't perfect until I think Monday of next week, but like it's just closer and closer, and the sun is in rough shape there in Libra, already in fall, and already like trying to come off of this eclipse and all of the rest of this. Like the sun is not comfortable there in Libra, and we're going to add a grumpy Mars who is getting closer and closer to Pluto, Pluto being the fun house mirror, right? Look into the mirror and see a distorted image, and then that can make you feel weird about yourself or your surroundings, and then that can make you then make some poor decisions about which actions you should take, right? That's Mars in Cancer opposite to Pluto in Capricorn. And so so that sun, when it comes to like projecting and being like who I am, and the self, the source, the light, this little light of mine that I'm going to shine out into the world, that sort of thing, is looking like it is having a tough time, maybe feeling a lot of pressure to be like something else. I would think that dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, and the other kinds of like psychological dysmorphias that can come from like spending too much time on social media and shit like that, that looks like it really wants to be operant this week. We can see that Mars in Cancer is ruling Venus in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio has already made the trine to Mars, and so Venus is moving away from that at this point. So the nice things that have happened to Mars in Cancer have happened. Those are in the past now. And so there's a lot of like grinding and difficulty going on here. So because there is so much difficulty, dysmorphia, all the rest of that going on, especially toward the end of the week, then it is a good idea at the beginning of the week to do your listening, to do your connective pieces, to get your connections and your communications on point, especially when you can listen to other people. When other people are going through it and you listen to them going through it, then that can generate strong bonds, which then can be helpful to have while shit hits the fan a little later in the week. Thank y'all so much. Check out Zabon.